Welcome to Native Bidaské, Native News Online's weekly spotlight on the people making news and leading change in Indian country.
Welcome to another episode of Native Bidaské. I'm Levi Rickert. I am the founder and publisher and editor of Native News Online. And Native Bidaské is our weekly show that we highlight those making news and leading change in Indian country. We have a really special guest today, Tafv Sampson, who is a Muscogee Creek woman who lives in Brooklyn, New York. And we're going to talk to her about her, she's a set designer and she works on Reservation Dogs. And welcome, Tafv. How are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for coming. Reservation Dogs in this final season. And we want to talk to you about your set, you being a set designer. But before that, your grandfather is famous. I mean, he is chief in One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, Will Sampson.
Yes.
And could you talk about your grandfather? Because I understand he passed away a couple of years before you were born, but tell us about him and how great he was. Because I personally think he played one of the coolest roles that I remember as a Native person as chief. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, even though I never met him, he passed about 2 years before I was born. I mean, he's such a legacy, not only in the Native community, but really, worldwide because of his role in Cuckoo's Nest and the films he did after. And he was a pretty big activist for, Native people in film and really spreading the history of our people. So I kind of feel like I do know him in a sense. And my father was very much like my grandfather and really made it his mission to continue that through acting and painting and writing and arts of all kinds. So I do feel like I know this man, and I'm sure we are speaking all the time. So,
and for those who are younger, Gen Z, and I lose track of all these gens, but if you haven't seen One Flew of the Cuckoo's Nest, you really owe it to yourself to, I don't know how you get your people still go get DVDs, I don't know, or if it's through streaming, but you really owe it to yourself to watch that movie because it was released, I want to say, in the early 1970s, and that was kind of like the rise of American Indian activism in the United States, Red Power and the American Indian movement.
Yeah.
And I think that the role that Will Sampson played in that movie had some pretty profound messages in themselves to what was going on with Indian country. And if you really watch it with intent, you can really get some of those messages. So I really endorse it. I've seen that movie, I don't know how many times. And I know a guy who actually played chief in Cuckoo's Nest out in San Francisco, right? A good friend of mine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I do get contacted by people that are like, I played that role in this and that. And it's so
nice. It's kind of taken a life of its own throughout the years, Cuckoo's Nest. So
yeah, it has. And it's, people are still reprising that role all over the place, whether it's, small theater or if it's kind of like spin-off goofs and, bigger TV shows. The role continues, which was really great because my father got to do it on Broadway and through Steppenwolf Theater for many years, and they ended up winning the Tony Award. I believe this was in late 90s sometime. And he continued to really play that role, for most of his life in different things and different plays and TV shows. So yeah, it's really carried on. So I guess I'm next in line. I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I was sitting here thinking as you were talking that, you're carrying on a legacy of your grandfather, your father, who was Tim Sampson, was an actor in his own right, won a Tony Award, and so you come from a fantastic tradition. And did you ever grow up in any dealings with living in Oklahoma, or have you always lived away from tribal land?
I never lived in Oklahoma. I would go back occasionally when I was younger with my dad to go visit my family that still lives on the same road, which is now called Will Sampson Road.
That's too cool.
Preston, Oklahoma, which is right outside of Okmulgee by like 10-15 minutes, which is where we end up shooting Res Dogs. So, when I got the call for this job, it was really pretty kismet that this was taking me back home in a sense. And it was right after my father had passed also. So really felt like someone was pushing me to do this job.
Now you have appeared in Res Dogs as well, correct? I mean, tell us about that role that you played in there.
Oh man, well, I did end up watching Cuckoo's Nest right before I did that because I mean, I think this is public knowledge at this point, but that role was not written for me. That role was written for the very beautiful and legendary Irene Bedard.
Yes.
So a real elder. And, you know, right before shooting, she was unable to do the part. And this was only about 3 days before. But the costume was custom made for her. And Sterling was like, well, you want to do it?
Are you serious?
Yeah, well, for the costume was really, really important for this episode because it was traditional Seminole and custom made. And we joked that I was like the only person that fit it. But you know, Res Dogs is kind of like that in a sense. You know, it's very fluid, and we're kind of a big family. And you know, that's happened a couple times where we just throw our crew members and cast members in there. Ryan Redcorn, one of our goofy, sweet writers, ended up taking the Tafv Sampson road to fame, as he calls it, because right before first episode, someone was unable to do it, and so he plays like the guy on the bus, the goofy guy on the bus for the first episode.
Yeah, I think that Native Americans have a way of, we've been improvising for a long time because
a lot of improvising, and
we've had to make do out of things a lot of times and have a whole lot, but so we've had to improvise throughout most of our lives. So it's so cool to hear that side of the story. So
we did, and that role, I mean, it was really fun to do. And through it, I met Lily Gladstone, who's really just one of the most incredible humans I've ever met in my life. And I've had the honor of working with her on Fancy Dance this summer that we filmed. So it really felt, I mean, I'm so glad it happened. I was really shaking in my boots.
Well, talk to us about your set design. How did you get into it, and at what age would you say you really thought that's something you wanted to do?
Well, I would say I've always been a really arts and crafts kid. I was never a sports kid. I was always inside making things. And then after high school, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to go to college for. And it seemed sort of like a waste of money at that point to go and just do general studies. So I ended up moving to New York temporarily to art PA on a Warner Brothers film, with the intention of getting some real life experience for 4 months and then deciding on a major after that and moving back to Portland. But of course, like most New York stories, I went to New York to do this, and then I never came home. So
you're still out in Brooklyn, New York?
Yeah, still in Brooklyn. So I was in film my first about year and a half in New York doing set design, art PAing, really, you know, just assistant to the people doing all the decision makings. But I loved it, and I loved the creativity and the fast paced, and then having to think on your feet and just being absorbed in a world for such a, you know, finite chunk of time. And then I was in fashion for about 10 years. And then Res Dogs was the first call I got back to do film, which I was kind of reluctant to because I'm not in the union and I hadn't been in film in a decade, and it was COVID still. So I was sort of didn't know if leaving was the best idea. But like I said, my dad had passed recently and I was really deep in like the grieving process. And then there's sort of a wild story that connected me back to this show. And so I said, this is the call. This is the sign to go. So I did.
Well, that's great. I lost my mom in July of this year. So it's really
my father passed in July also.
Yeah, it's a profound thing when you lose a parent. And for those who've never lost a parent, it's quite tragic, actually. It's just really profound. That grieving process, you kind of like, even though I've been adulting, as they say, for many years, I am now saying, how do I adult without my mom, who's always been there? And so,
Yeah, it's I was lucky enough. My dad found out he was sick, and he lived for about almost a year after he found out. And I was lucky enough to be able to leave New York for that year, and I went and took care of him. He passed at home, and we were spent every single day together. When he was well enough, we went to breakfast every morning. That was our routine.
that's, you can cherish those memories. Wow.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And even towards the end, it was just very graceful and beautiful, and obviously very hard for me. But I'm so glad to have had that time with him. Yeah.
That's one of those, I think, is those gifts from the Creator. Truly.
Yeah.
I travel a lot in my business, and I was, we saw our mother failing, right? She was almost 92, 3 days short of 92. And I'd go visit her before I left, and the day after, maybe I got back, depending on when I got back. Visit your mom at midnight. If you get on off a plane at midnight, you go visit her. But I'd go like the next day, but the idea, I was in town when she passed away, and had spent the night next to her on a recliner, and it was just, I will always really appreciate that and cherish that. The Creator gave me that gift to be able to be with her, and so
it was really special. And the last few nights we were watching movies that he was in, and the night he passed,
that is so nice.
We watched War Party, which him and my mom were at together. This was right before I was born. They did War Party. So it was really, I feel like he's really been with me this whole time. And I was really asking after he passed, I so desperately missed him, of course, and was feeling the pull to be with my family and my people. And I was so far removed from it at that point. And it was COVID, and I was like, what is going to bring me home? I can visit, I can do this and that, but it didn't seem like enough. And then Res Dogs called me, which was actually a really beautiful story. And we can cut this out if it's too long, and I'll try and condense it. But my father was writing a script since I was 10 about his time in boarding school at Sequoia. And it's really sweet, beautiful. It's very Res Dogs. There's really hard things and beautiful things, but mostly it's very goofy. And it's all true. And in the script, he has like a love of his life, and she's the homecoming queen. He's homecoming king, and she's a big part of the script. So I've known who this character was since I was 10. And when we had his service in Henrietta in Oklahoma, a woman came who I didn't know, and she introduced herself to me after. And she was like, your dad's very special to me. We are homecoming king and queen. And I said, oh my gosh, I know exactly who you are. And she was just lovely and bubbly. And we became Facebook friends. And then shortly after, I got the call for Sterling Harjo's Reservation Dogs project. And I was like, Harjo, I know that's a common name, but I think that's the last name of this woman who I met. So I looked her up on Facebook, and it turns out Sterling is her son.
Wow.
So our parents were homecoming king and queen and adored each other their whole lives and stayed great friends. And now Sterling has become my family and one of my greatest friends. And so it all feels very much like, this is no accident.
Yeah. The Creator always knows how to put things together. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That is for sure. Hey, I have a question in terms of set design. And it really deals with, how do you ensure that things are authentic? And when I say that, authentically Native American, as they should be, because you and I both know Hollywood through the years have misrepresented, and they'll have a headdress on a Seminole that has nothing to do with what the Seminoles kind of headdress they had. That's just an example. But how do you ensure these things are authentic, that the sets are authentic?
Well, Oklahoma posed a really interesting situation for me when I began, because I was so used to working in New York and in projects obviously that weren't, as thoughtful sometimes, but no access to prop houses, no access to fabricators, no, and in the beginning I was like, my gosh, how are we going to do this with our time frame? Because TV is really fast paced. So usually I have like a week to, prep an entire episode. But it became very clear very early on that this community in Oklahoma was really there to support us with everything, down to, I mean, even like big things. I'm like, what auntie, what uncle like wants to sell me their couch for a week? I'll give it back.
Are you serious?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
cool.
we shot in my Auntie Pogie's house for fancy dance. We're like, well, we couldn't find a house, so we took over her place and used most of the things in her house. But it's also really beautiful because I was learning a lot on the job too about, specific things in homes and props being used. And I was like, well, we have the gift of actually being here in this community with elders that have knowledge and stories and skills that you would not be able to find anywhere else. Even in this past, season 3, I think I can only give away things we've seen so far, but Bear gets shot in the neck by Greene with a blow dart. And those blow darts were made by an elder who we work with all the time. His name's John Brown, and he lives out in Mounds, Oklahoma. And, him and I sat at, 11 o'clock at night, and we made these. He makes them from scratch from beaver fur and rabbit fur, and we made them by hand, like every single one. And that's just, I mean, gosh, there's so many. If I could just spend the time breaking down every episode, because every single thing in there is so special, down to like background pictures you barely see, or like the cookie that's sitting on the side table. Like every little thing has a story and a connection to people in this community. And gosh, I hope that it translates through the screen for people that aren't able to be involved, because there's so much heart put into every detail and little painting and every little piece of cloth. Like there's so many things you see. Like sometimes the pillowcases, you don't even know how special they are because they belong to this one person. But I could ramble on forever about this. Really.
No, I like it. And I really love that word community, because as Native people, we know that word is so critical. I mean, who we are, we identify ourselves through our tribes, clans, and in communities. There's no two ways about that. And the idea that the community came together, and back to what we talked about earlier about the improvisation that takes place in Indian country, we've had to improvise. So
to improvise. Plus, gosh, I mean, do you know how much joy it brings us and brings them? Like it's such a constant dialogue between the people that are making this show and the people that are part of this community. Like it's everyone's really making this show. Like everyone that lives in these towns, everyone that's helping us. It feels like it belongs to everybody, not just the people that are, behind the camera. It's such a special show. I can't even believe that we got to make something so incredible. It really feels like we changed the narrative and changed the world in terms of how people see us and our culture.
There's been various intervals of where there seems to be moments for Native Americans. And I was reading something just recently, like early 1900s, everybody was focused on Native Americans. And of course, they always want to preserve that noble savage, which you and I probably say, what are you talking about? But there really seemed to be a moment with Res Dog, Rutherford Falls, and now that they're leaving, how do we ensure that this moment continues?
Well, I think Res Dogs I think it really changed the dialogue in the broader spectrum. I mean, Res Dogs was obviously very important to us and our community. And when we made season 1, we were not sure that this would be received really by anyone other than, our beloved community. We're like, well, we're really making it for us. And then when season 1 happened, I think we were all completely blown away that, the world responded to it. People that truly didn't think Native Americans still existed, which is a terrifying concept, but I've been asked that before in my life in New York. They're like, oh, I didn't know Native people were still here. And so, there's still a lot of unknowns for people about us and our culture. And this was sort of the most beautiful way to show them, like not tell them, but like show them and like bring them. Everyone's invited into this show. It's not like the stoic Native or the wounded Native. It's so relatable. And I think opening that up and having people see how goofy we are and how normal we are, and we also have like big complicated families, and we have dreams and sorrows just like everyone else. And I think that this really shifted something. I think we all felt it and still feel it even now, when every episode airs. And there's a lot of things coming down the pipe, I'll just say. I mean, everyone that works on this show or writes it or directs it or stars in it, everyone has been so fueled by this. I feel like there's just endless projects that everyone's so excited to do, and they're excited to do together. So I would just like to keep working with these people for the rest of my life.
That's great.
That's really great. The plan, Erica Tremblay, one of our writer directors on the show, she wrote and directed Fancy Dance this summer, which we filmed also in Oklahoma, starring Lily. And it's just a lot of our same crew from Res Dogs, and a very different story, obviously, but still like pouring as much love and attention into it that we could. And I really think
so the good news is, Tafv, is that even though Reservation Dogs will leave after the 3rd season, there are people involved with the show will continue on. And you're talking like through Netflix, Hulu, or wherever, or people are picking up on.
I have no idea where things are going to air, but I feel like after Res Dogs, I feel like there is sort of an opening in those platforms for us now, which wasn't entirely sure if that was open to us before. I think people want more of this. People want to hear these stories, and there's a lot of education happening through them as well. It's sort of disguised in like a very sweet, tender, 30-minute episode, but we're really packing a lot into
there's a whole lot packed in there.
Dear Lady episode that just happened, and Maximus, and it's really the fun challenge of like, how can we teach through like open hearts and goofiness and tenderness, and with 30 minutes on the clock. It's a really interesting challenge, but I think everyone really puts everything into it, and I think you can tell.
And in various sectors, in the news, we cover so many different sectors, but whether it's educational, business, on and on. One of the things that is a common theme that, and you use the word challenge, is challenge that we have is we have to educate non-natives as to who we are as Native people. Because they have these myths about us, like the stoic Indian, the noble savage, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you're right, and use that term goofy a couple times, but
it's
good old Indian humor is what I call it.
I know. I mean, there's really no one goofier or funnier truly than like how my father was and how he was with his siblings, and the way it's so much teasing, like and I love that. I mean, I grew up obviously with my dad, and it's just that's how you show love.
That's how we were with our cousins and I. We would tease each other almost unmercifully.
I mean, it's the language of love, really.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It really is. I was actually with somebody in San Francisco recently, and I made a joke about the street called Columbus, and he didn't get it. And I'm going like, you do know. And I told him, I said, if I was with Native Americans, that whole car would be laughing right now because it was funny. And it's like, but this guy, not Native, he did not get it. So it's kind of a sidebar, but well, I'm happy to hear that. Hey, what advice would you give young people who have aspirations to? Not everyone's going to be on Res Dogs. Not everyone's going to be a Sterling Harjo or a Tafv Sampson. But what would you tell people to go after those dreams? Go chase those dreams. What would you tell a young person?
When I first began, I didn't really know this was a job at all when I first began. I'm still kind of figuring out. I'm like, gosh, I can't believe I get to do this for a job. But, I think if you're pulled to make and pulled to a community and pulled to create something with someone, it starts with yourself. If you're pulled to make something, like do something on your own and share it with someone, share it with a best friend or an elder or email someone. Everyone is very scared to put themselves out there. And if anyone wrote me from anywhere in the world saying, I don't know anything about this, but I would love to learn, I would be so happy to talk with them or, bring them along for a week. I did that a few times on Res Dogs, kids of family members. I was like, well, we're going to be in the car all day driving around Oklahoma, like thrift shopping, but get in the car, let's go. So
that is so nice.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I asked that question because I'm one of these strong believers. Our youth need direction, and I'm always one that I know with my own children, I never told them they couldn't do anything. And I have a daughter that's very talented artist, a son who's a graphic designer, one's an executive at United Airlines now, and it's like, go after your dreams. Go get them.
Yeah.
I never said you can't do that. It's like I was never that kind of parent. I was always like, go be as great as you can be. And so I'm so happy you did that. And you were mentoring those youth while you were out there in Oklahoma.
Yeah. You never know where something's gonna lead. I never thought that, me working in fashion would lead to this, which I really feel like is the place I was supposed to land. I've been working in this industry since I was 20, and I felt for a long time like it was a job, and that was fine, and I loved being creative. But after Res Dogs, I really felt like I landed where I was meant to be in this field. So it doesn't always happen immediately. Sometimes it takes a long time and a lot of hard work, but just be courageous and be kind and be yourself, and I don't think you can really go wrong if you do all this.
I agree. And Tafv, thank you so much for coming on. Chi Miigwech to you for coming on.
Mado for having me. Thank you.
Sharing your stories. You inspired me, and I just hope that other younger people will even say, hey, you know what? If she can do it, if she did it, I can go do it too, and we'll go fulfill those dreams, young people.
That's right. Yeah. You can contact me anytime. I still have a Yahoo address, so
And we hope that we stay in contact with you, and any future projects that you work on, please reach out to us and we'll get you back.
Yes, thank you. And anytime you want to talk, I would be honored. Thank you so much, Madel.
Thank you so much. And Chi Miigwech, and to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Native Bidaské. We'll be back next week. So getting towards that back to school time for our youth. Kids, you got to get your education. So get back to school, study hard, make your parents proud, make your tribal communities proud, and parents, take care of your kids. So Chi Miigwech, everybody. We'll see you next week.
If you appreciate what we do here at Native News Online, we invite you to donate to support our continued work covering Indian country. You can scan this code with your smartphone or go to the link located below this video to donate today. We greatly appreciate your support. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to scan this code or go to the link below to subscribe to our newsletter. Thank you for joining us today, and please be sure to join us again next week for another episode of Native Bidaské. Chi Miigwech.